When you scroll through the endless sea of gaming laptops, you start to notice a pattern. The pictures look sleek, the specs sparkle, and then the real-world experience turns out to be a lot less impressive. I've seen friends buy a laptop that promised ultra-fast frame rates only to end up fighting with throttling heat and a display that looks washed out in a sunny room. That hesitation is exactly why I'm diving deep into the ASUS ROG Strix G18, so you can skip the guesswork and decide if this beast is worth the price tag. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the most obvious selling point is the 18-inch Nebula display. A 16:10 aspect ratio gives you a little extra vertical real estate compared with the usual 16:9 panels, which is a subtle but genuine advantage when you're scouting a map in a battle royale or editing a video after a long session. The QHD resolution paired with a 240Hz refresh rate and a 3 milliseconds response time means motion looks buttery smooth, and competitive gamers will notice the reduced blur instantly. In practice, I tested a fast-paced shooter at max settings. The frame count stayed solid above 120 frames per second, and the motion blur was practically non-existent. That's not just marketing hype, it's the kind of consistency that can actually shave a few milliseconds off your reaction time. But a display is only as good as the hardware that feeds it. The Strix G18 is powered by Intel's 14th Gen i9-14900HX and an RTX 4070. Those components sit in a chassis that ASUS calls ROG Intelligent Cooling, which uses liquid metal on both the CPU and GPU heat pipes. In a real-world scenario, I ran a 30-minute gaming marathon with Cyberpunk 2077 at ultra settings. The temperatures hovered in the low 80°C, and the fan curve was aggressive but not air-splitting. The liquid metal solution does its job, yet you still feel a noticeable ramp-up in noise once the GPU pushes past 90 W. If you're sensitive to fan whine while streaming or recording, you'll want to keep the volume up a notch or invest in a good pair of noise-canceling headphones. Storage and memory are another area where the G18 tries to impress. A 1TB PCIe 4.0 SSD means load times are practically instantaneous. Game worlds that used to take a minute to appear now load in under 10 seconds. The 32GB of DDR5 5600 RAM isn't just a number on a spec sheet, it translates to seamless multitasking. I could have Discord, Chrome with dozens of tabs, and the game itself running side by side without a single hitch. For creators who edit footage between matches, that RAM headroom can be a lifesaver. However, the laptop ships with a single M.2 slot, so expanding storage later requires you to replace the existing drive or use an external enclosure, which might be a deal-breaker if you anticipate massive game libraries. Portability is a mixed bag. The 18-inch screen naturally makes the machine larger and heavier than a typical 15-inch notebook. It weighs just under 7 pounds and measures about 1.2 inches thick, so it's not something you'll comfortably lug onto a coffee shop couch for an hour. That said, the chassis is sturdy, and the keyboard offers a full-size layout with perky RGB, which feels great for marathon sessions at a desk. The battery life is modest, roughly 4 hours of mixed use before you need to plug in, which aligns with most high-performance gaming rigs. If you expect to game on the go without a power outlet, you'll quickly learn to manage expectations. One feature that often gets overlooked is the MUX Switch with Advanced Optimus. Most laptops rely on the integrated graphics for power savings, but the Strix G18 lets you toggle directly to the RTX 4070, eliminating the performance penalty that comes from the dual GPU handshake. In practice, enabling the MUX Switch gave me a clean 56 frames per second boost in titles that are GPU-bound, like Valorant. The downside? Switching modes requires a reboot, which isn't ideal if you need to flip between power saving and peak performance on a whim. For pure gamers who stay in one mode for an entire session, it's a solid trade-off. For casual users who juggle work and play, the extra step can feel cumbersome. Who should consider buying the Strix G18? If you're a competitive player who values a high refresh, high-resolution display, and you want a laptop that can handle the latest AAA titles at max settings without dropping frames, this machine hits the sweet spot. It also appeals to creators who need that extra RAM and fast SSD for video editing, streaming, and multitasking. The combination of a powerful CPU, RTX 4070, and a 240Hz screen means you're future-proofed for at least the next few years of game releases. Who should walk away? If you're primarily after a portable, battery-friendly device for occasional gaming, the size and weight of the G18 make it a less practical choice. Likewise, if you're on a tight budget, the premium price of the 32GB per 1TB configuration could be stretched further by opting for a 15-inch model with a slightly lower-end GPU, especially if you don't need the ultra-wide screen real estate. And if you're a noise-sensitive